On the night of August 21, 1986, a lake in the highlands of Cameroon exploded, and by the next morning, nearly 1,800 people were dead. There was no fire, no lava, no earthquake, and almost no warning. The killer was invisible. It moved downhill in near total silence, and most of its victims died in their sleep without ever knowing it existed. This is the true story of Lake Nyos, a disaster so strange that scientists at first struggled to believe it was possible, a phenomenon so rare that only 3 lakes on Earth are known to be capable of it, and a threat that, in one place on this planet, still hangs over roughly 2 million people today. To understand what happened, you have to see the place. Lake Nyos sits in the volcanic highlands of northwest Cameroon, cupped inside an old crater on the flank of a dormant volcano. It is not large, roughly 2 kilometers across, but it is deep, more than 200 meters down. In 1986 its surface was a calm, brilliant blue. Around it lay a patchwork of grassland hills, cattle herders, and small farming villages, Nyos, Cam, Cha, Subum, places of mud brick houses and tin roofs, corn fields and cattle pens. August 21st was a Thursday. By most accounts a market day had just wound down, the rains had been falling, and people went to bed early and full. Nothing about the day was unusual. But the people of these highlands had old stories about their lakes. Anthropologists who came later recorded local traditions of lakes that could rise up, move, even kill, of spirits in the water that demanded respect, and of ground near certain lakes where the ancestors said you should not build. Whether those legends encoded memories of real, earlier disasters is impossible to prove. That part is folklore, and I'll flag it as such, but after 1986, more than one researcher would look at those stories and wonder whether they were something closer to a warning. Because deep beneath the postcard blue surface, Lake Nyos was loading a weapon. The crater sits on top of a volcanic pipe, and although the volcano is dormant, magma still cools far below, exhaling carbon dioxide. That gas seeps upward through the rock and dissolves into the groundwater feeding the bottom of the lake. In most lakes around the world this would be harmless, because most lakes turn over, seasonal winds and temperature swings mix deep water with surface water, and any gas simply fizzes away gradually. But Nyos is a tropical lake, sheltered by crater walls, holding an almost constant temperature all year. Its layers do not mix. So for decades, perhaps centuries, the cold bottom water sat undisturbed, quietly absorbing carbon dioxide under the crushing pressure of the water above. Exactly like a soda bottle, sealed, shaken, and waiting. By August 1986, the deep water of Lake Nyos held hundreds of millions of cubic meters of dissolved gas. All it needed was something to twist the cap. There had already been a rehearsal, and almost nobody understood it. 2 years earlier, in August 1984, at Lake Manoon, a smaller crater lake about 100 kilometers to the south, 37 people died suddenly in the early morning hours on a low stretch of road near the shore. The bodies were unmarked. Rumors flew: a bomb, a chemical attack, a poisoning. A volcanologist named Harold Sigerson investigated and reached a conclusion so strange it was initially met with real skepticism. The lake itself had burped out a cloud of carbon dioxide and suffocated everyone caught in the low ground. Few people ever heard about it. And so, when the same thing happened again, on a vastly larger scale, the world was caught completely blind. At around 9:30 in the evening on August 21, 1986, something disturbed the deep water of Lake Nyos. To this day, no one knows exactly what. A rockslide into the lake, unusually cool rain sinking through the surface, a slow build-up finally crossing its tipping point, all have been proposed, none proven. Whatever it was, it lifted a mass of the gas-saturated bottom. Water upward. As the water rose, the pressure on it dropped, and the dissolved carbon dioxide erupted out of solution. Bubbles formed, the bubbles dragged more deep water up, that water released more gas, and within moments the lake was a runaway chain reaction, a limnic eruption, the soda bottle bursting open. People far away reported a rumbling. Some accounts describe a jet of water and foam blasting from the surface. Estimates of its height vary wildly and are honestly uncertain, and a surge of water washed the shoreline hard enough to strip vegetation. In a matter of minutes, the lake released, by the most widely cited estimate, around 1.6 million tons of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is roughly 1.5 times heavier than air. So this enormous cloud did not rise and scatter. It poured over the crater rim like water over the lip of a bowl, and it flowed downhill, a river of invisible gas, tens of meters thick, following the valleys at a speed usually estimated between 20 and 50 kilometers per hour. Faster than anyone could run. It rolled into Nyos village, nearest the lake, then swept on through the valleys toward Cam, Cha, and Subum, reaching communities more than 20 kilometers away. Air that is only a few percent carbon dioxide makes you gasp. Above about 10%, you lose consciousness within minutes. At the concentrations inside that cloud, people collapsed within a few breaths. Whole households sleeping in their homes simply never woke. Those who stepped outside to investigate the noise dropped where they stood. Survivors later recalled oil lamps guttering out as the gas displaced the oxygen in the room, and then nothing. The cloud killed the cattle on the hillsides, the birds in the trees, even the insects on the ground. Because the gas hugged the ground, geography decided who lived and who died. People sleeping on high ground, or on the upper floors of the few taller buildings, sometimes survived while their neighbors a few meters downhill did not. And then, over the following hours, the cloud thinned, mixed into the wind, and vanished, leaving no wreckage, no burn line, no trace of itself at all. Around 1,746 people were dead, along with some 3,500 head of livestock. In Nyos village, closest to the lake, only a handful of residents survived. The accounts of those survivors are among the most haunting on record. Many had been knocked unconscious and woke 6, 12, even 36 hours later, weak, confused, aching, to a world with no sound in it. No voices. No dogs. No birdsong. No insects. The silence was total, because almost nothing in those valleys was left alive. One survivor, Joseph Nquain, described waking unable to speak or open his mouth, finding his lamp dead though it still held oil, and discovering, one by one, that the people in his household would never wake up. Many survivors reported a strange smell in their final conscious moments, rotten eggs, or gunpowder. And here is an honest flag: carbon dioxide has no smell. Scientists still debate whether those odors came from trace volcanic gases riding in the cloud, or whether they were hallucinations conjured by oxygen-starved brains. Some survivors also bore skin lesions that early reports called chemical burns. Investigators later concluded they were most likely pressure sores from lying motionless for many hours, though that detail, too, was argued over for years. The first outsiders to reach the valleys found scenes they struggled to describe. Villages that looked untouched, meals half-eaten, doors open, herds scattered dead across green hillsides, and everywhere, the dead lying as if asleep, without a single wound. Doctors found no trauma, no disease, no poison they could name. In the absence of an explanation, rumor filled the vacuum: a neutron bomb test, a secret weapons accident, a deliberate massacre, all unfounded, but you can understand the impulse, because the truth sounded even less believable. Around 4,000 survivors fled or were evacuated, and mass graves were dug quickly, which, one more honest caveat, is part of why the exact death toll can never be perfectly known. 1,746 is the widely used official figure. Then the scientists arrived, from Cameroon, France, the United States, Japan, and beyond, and the lake itself handed them the first clue. Nyos had changed color. The famous blue was gone, replaced by a murky, rusty red, iron-rich water from the bottom had been hurled to the surface and oxidized in the open air. The lake had literally turned itself over. Researchers, including limnologist George Kling and geochemist Bill Evans, sampled the depths and found the smoking gun. The deep water was still fizzing with dissolved carbon dioxide, and the gas was already building again, recharging from below. The conclusion was inescapable and terrifying. This could happen again. And the only two other lakes on Earth known to share this loaded gun structure were Manoon, and a giant called Kivu. First, they had to defuse Nyos. The solution, when it finally came, was almost absurdly simple: a pipe. Run a tube from the deep water to the surface, start the flow once, and physics does the rest. Gas-rich water rises, bubbles expand and drive the flow faster, and the pipe becomes a self-powering fountain, spraying the danger into the sky a little at a time instead of all at once. After trials in the 1990s, the first permanent degassing pipe was installed in 2001, sending a plume of grey, gas-charged water jetting high above the lake, a fountain powered by nothing but the lake's own trapped breath. 2 more pipes followed in 2011, and over the years the operation has bled off a large share of the stored gas. Lake Manoon was fitted with pipes of its own and has since been declared essentially safe. Engineers also shored up the crater's natural rock rim, which studies had found alarmingly weak, because a collapse would have sent a wall of water from the lake down the valleys toward Nigeria. And that leaves Kivu. On the border of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo lies a lake roughly 2,000 times the size of Nyos, its depths loaded not only with carbon dioxide but with vast quantities of methane, and along its shores live around 2 million people, in a region where locals have long spoken of the Mazuku, pockets of ground-hugging volcanic gas whose name is often translated as evil wind. Whether Kivu could ever erupt the way Nyos did is genuinely debated. Its enormous depth may actually work in its favor. But the stakes are high enough that Rwanda now extracts the methane to generate electricity, an energy project that doubles as a slow-motion diffusing of the largest loaded lake on Earth. Today, people live around Lake Nyos again. The government kept the area closed for years, but survivors and their descendants drifted back from the resettlement camps long before officials declared it safe, because the land was theirs, and the grass was good, and life goes on. Scientists still monitor the water, and the elders still tell the story of the night the lake breathed out. The pipes still fountain over the water. The lake is blue again. And the story of the night it exploded remains one of the strangest disasters in recorded history. More than 1,700 people killed in minutes, by a cloud no one could see, from a lake that looked like paradise. If you want more forgotten history that sounds made up but isn't, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.